Yeah, we're good.
I think we're looking good. Hello, everybody in the streaming world. We are the Podguyz podcast, bringing it to you live as we do 10:15 Eastern Standard Time. I'm Tony Kaz.
Kevin Neary here.
Of course, we have the ever-loving Picasso, the dreamer of dreams, the wiper of whiteboards, the rusty Fender of the whiteboard.
The rusty
That's what
Fender
we're
of the
gonna go
whiteboard.
with.
All right, yeah.
Yeah. Le Sparky.
And Sparky holds up that big board saying hi to everybody. I mean, Sparky, you could say
Unfortunately, only one of us in these four squares can do the ones and twos of bumper to bumper traffic, and it is not Sparky. Sadness.
sadness indeed.
But we are joined by the legendary Rusty Fender.
And gentlemen, thank you so much. Great to be here. By the way, Tony, it's Eastern Daylight Time, not Eastern Standard Time. Just one correction.
Whoa. Is it really? Is it really? Okay.
I listen to every word.
Well, you are you're like the unicorn of the radio world, sir. Magical, mystical, legendary. You have done it all. For our viewers watching at home, tell them what you have done, where you've been, where have you been?
Well, and thanks for that great lead in, Tony, Kevin, Sparky, all you folks. Appreciate being here. Thank you so much. Yeah, I've had a really good run. I've been in the right places at the right time. 28 years in New York City in charge of satellite operations, engineering, what they call TT&C. It's telemetry, tracking, and control of all the communication satellites. That'd be C, Ku, and Ka band. I flew satellites in ionospheric orbit for 28 years for, ready? CBS, NBC, MSNBC in Secaucus, New Jersey, CNBC in Inglewood Cliffs. I left PennDOT 3 years ago to go back to Fox News, and then worked at the World Center twice, the old World Trade Center for AT&T. So I guess working there twice, I guess my number was not quite up yet. And then got the actual job doing Saturday Night Live at the Oldies back in 1986. That morphed into doing the traffic job for 27 years as Rusty Fender, and then back 9 years ago working for the state of Pennsylvania with the DEP as their senior environmental engineer, then DER, now at PennDOT District 6 out of Philadelphia. That's it in a nutshell, Tony.
That is a hell of a bullet point right there. Play by play indeed, right? But Rusty, the whole thing is, man, radio has changed throughout the years. You've been doing it 28 plus years. We've been doing this for X amount of time. I've been doing stand-up comedy 13, 14 years now, and hanging out with Tony doing this for about 4 or 5 years now. And what has changed the most in radio as far as the audience goes, what they want to listen to, when they want to listen to? You would know best, my man.
This is great questions. And again, I know both of you folks, Tony from Pittston Township, you work right down the driveway every Saturday night at the mobile, now Exxon station. And I feel like I know you guys all my life. Let me just say that, and this is not to pat myself on the back, but if I do not get at least 1 or 2 messages a week that says I should be back doing Saturday Night Live at the Oldies after 32 years, I am not lying. However, I tell people this, in this world of ownership of all the stations in this country by 3 companies, that is the biggest, as we say in the aerospace engineering business, that is the biggest single point failure ever. That all the stations now, if you tune in any station across the country, you could literally, and not having Sirius XM, you could literally drive from New York to California and hear Ryan Seacrest on every station in America. That 100%. Is the biggest single point failure ever. Because if you're a Ryan Seacrest fan, there's probably 3 of them out there, but if you're a Ryan Seacrest fan, that's great. Every station has opted to get rid of their staff for budgetary reasons and put this schlock on from coast to coast with a recycled, rechanneled, rehashed morning show, which he does on Kiss FM in Los Angeles. And they try to make the bits relevant. So yeah, he talks to Taylor Swift and he talks to all, that's great. But it's like it has no relevance to the local market. Saturday Night Live at the Oldies, and I tell this, and everybody argues with me, if we put Saturday Night Live at the Oldies back on again right now, I do really not think, even with my fan base, that it would be a huge success. because back in those days, Tony and Kevin, I had some of the only copies of these rare songs, whether they were the old Verve labels from the 60s or whatever, the only copies I had in my collection. Now we're in the YouTube generation where you look up the title of a song that I had one copy of, and there's 90 different versions and 160 different remixes of it.
Oh,
so
God,
I don't,
yeah.
am I right? There's no such thing.
100%.
There's no such thing as a rarity. I mean,
you're
not only a
absolutely
rarity,
right. Yeah,
not only a rarity, but in general, the music, and I've heard this on countless different aspects of music, that that they're running out. And correct me if I'm wrong. They're running out of original music to put out, as far as a conglomeration of music in general. So that's why they're remixing, they're sampling, they're trying to do, their own little thing on an old twist. And it,
not only that,
it ruins music in general.
Not only that, Tony, getting back to your point, Rusty, with the with Ryan Seacrest being on every station, it alienates a whole base of audience that wants to listen to the radio, and the people that they're trying to target to get to want to listen, they are focused on the new customer who doesn't want them. They want the new girl at the dance who doesn't want anything to do with them. And then the old one that wants something to do with it has no place to sit at the table.
Yeah, Kevin, you're 100% correct. And the deal is, first of all, we have to realize that this is a business and it's all about the bottom line. So when the creators and the producers, and most importantly, the distributors of the Ryan Seacrest show, which is primarily, if you go further up the chain, is Disney. The deal is that they give Ryan Seacrest to all these stations across the country for literally a dime on a dollar. It's a song and a dance, because they give this away because they can quell the competition of anybody else. You're not going to pay somebody, even in this market, which is a low-paying market, as both of you know. You're not going to pay somebody $35,000, $30,000, $40,000 a year if you're really good, when you can get a show where they're going to pay you to carry it. That's the problem with the business. And you know what? Local television is going the same way. It's a whole different deal, because now they're pooling talent on local television. So you have anchors in this market that are feeding television stations that are based in South Bend, Indiana. What they do, these same two anchors are in 5 different markets. They do Fox 56 in Wilkes-Barre, Scranton. They do a station in Akron, Cincinnati, Cleveland, and one in either Kentucky or Tennessee. What they do, the local stations feed them the local stories about a fire in Scranton, a massive accident along Interstate 81 in Pennsylvania. They put it together at a regional hub. They send this down to the local affiliates at 7 o'clock at night, Eastern Standard Time or Eastern Daylight Time, and it's played back at 10 o'clock or the 11 o'clock news. Even television is not local anymore.
Yeah, there is a certain point. There is a certain point where you realize your steak dinner has turned into a stew.
That's right.
Older and more just chopped and put together.
That's right.
Syndication does take the heart out of the local culture. Tony, go.
That's correct.
I do have a question. Do you feel like the AP, Associated Press, has turned more into clickbait politics than it has Associated News?
You know, I don't. That's a great question. I think that could go not only, Tony, to the Associated Press, but I think your major television news organizations like MSNBC, which is, Microsoft actually, and CNN. I really don't know about that. I think that the television has more of a grasp on the jugular of the actual, John and Jane Q public on the deal. I think the Associated Press, to be quite honest with you, is one of the last vestiges of holding out onto at least putting out some real news out there. I mean, we dissolved 25, 30 years ago. We dissolved their competition, United Press International. It was AP and UPI, and Reuters. So we still have Reuters, which is internationally based, and the Associated Press. UPI is gone, just like Sirius and XM merged about 12 years ago into the same company. You have to keep merging anymore. And I think that the Associated Press, I don't know if that's actually clickbait, to be honest with you, but I know that a lot of the TV organizations certainly are.
You got the 10 things you didn't know about Tom Cruise's ex-wives. Click here now. And And I agree with you on merging, right? Unless your drum
Right.
roll, please, AT&T that just likes to buy junk throughout the years, and
Right.
they're like, "Hey, AT&T, what are you gonna do with HBO?" They're like, "We own HBO." Oh man, I don't remember buying that.
And Discovery, Kevin, and Discovery.
Discovery.
They did Discovery with
Warner
all
Bros.
their channels. So you have Discovery, you have the History Channel. They're all Discovery based, and they're actually in your area. They're in Bethesda, Maryland, which is the main office of theirs. And it's
AT&T
like
AT&T bought so much stuff they had to use that and create a subdivision company
that's
from
exactly
themselves.
right. That's
Just so
exactly
that
right.
could fail.
And
Buy them time.
the problem is they buy a lot of lost leaders, Kevin. They buy things that look really good, like, well, holy cow, like the Discovery Channel, like they own the Travel Channel. Yeah, but you know what? They're not real money makers because and this is the truth. I tell people this at least once a week. I'm looking at the Discovery Channel and I'm watching shows like Deadliest Catch. I saw these shows 15 years ago and they're still running. So, like, why have 499 channels if it's the same stuff all the time? Less is more. Less is more.
Don't forget DirecTV for some odd reason. Time Warner.
Yeah.
Time.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
Time is still a magazine.
Time Warner Amex. That was the American Express in those days. So 1979, Amex bought into that. So it was Time Warner Amex. And then they spun everything, and CNN now is in it just tremendous, horrible financial despair, CNN. They went from, the premier headline news service now to a laughable, one-sided political kind of a farce, to be honest with you. So
and that's exactly what I'm talking about. The one-sided clickbait material. That has even scattered across the internet in general. So, with the downfall of papers, let's be honest here, the downfall of papers has discontinued entirely. So even that whole entire market, you may have one out of maybe 1,000, if not even like 5,000 people that may get a paper now.
That's correct. And the subscriber base isn't working. So as both of you gentlemen know, that WNEP is the major leader in this area, and even Gannett newspapers, which was the biggest. Gannett was like the New York Post, the New York Times. So Gannett even founded their own television division called Tegna out of Virginia, and now they own WNEP and about 70 stations around the country. So even the newspapers a few years ago, Kevin and Tony, kind of morphed into this, we're not going to make any money with subscribing, so we're going to get into the TV business. And I don't know if you're making a heck of a lot of money in the TV business either, my friends.
Yeah, now getting back to Tony's clickbait idea there, you mentioned Disney earlier, and a lot of different networks or streaming sites, they're calling themselves now. It didn't take them long to hop on that boat, about 15 years too late to the party. Disney is trying this, they call it go woke, go broke. I hate that saying. Just because it rhymes doesn't mean it makes any particular sense. Their inclusiveness with races, cultures, sexuality. It creates a lot of controversy amongst people that remember The Little Mermaid and Star Wars the way that they remember it. Is that production alone a form of clickbait advertising just because? Is it intentional? What's your take?
It's a great question. I personally think it's a form of discrimination. And I'm going to take the other side of that. You have Disney, and you're right. I see go woke, go broke every other day. We know that their ideas, and this is from Bob Iger on down, we know their ideas are not working. The only network I didn't work for in New York was ABC, owned by Disney. And two Marches ago, so 2 years ago, they fired 5,000 people because ABC moved all their operations. The studios will always be in New York, but they moved their operations to this brand new corporate facility in Houston, Texas called the Woodlands. So all the Fortune 100 companies like ExxonMobil, British Petroleum, IBM, and now Disney is at this main center. So instead of having a control center switching to local commercials at all your ABC stations across the country like we did 10 years ago, now there's a hub that switches local commercials for all their owned and operated stations in Chicago and Miami and Houston and Dallas and the whole deal. So when Disney did that, I think they started this whole campaign where they don't look at a quality product. They look at inclusivity and acceptance. I really don't think we should remake, the Snow White without the seven dwarfs because they were height challenged. I think we're getting into the craziness now, and that's why their movies, aren't panning out. The biggest pushback was on Hulu, which they own about, I think, 60% of Hulu. Hulu is a great streaming service. So about 3 years ago, now they're locking away these classic motion pictures like Song of the South because it has to do with the Negro population back in the South, Black people having slaves. I mean, that's a piece of history. So we're going to lock this classic away now. It's not going to be available anywhere unless you have an old VHS or beta tape of this thing from 25 years ago. See, this is where they're overanalyzing and micromanaging humanity, Kevin and Tony. That's the problem. It's not the clickbait. It's the fact that you have someone that's out of touch with the demo that you're looking for. And the demo, as both of you probably know, is still 25 to 54 years of age. You're going to cover things from the 50s and the 60s and the 70s. You don't care about the 12 to 18s. You don't care about the 55 to death demo. You care about the 25 to 54, preferably a single or divorced female who does all the buying. Everything's from household ingredients like liquid Tide right down to buying a Volvo. That's what you're looking for. And I think Disney is really missing the point with having a guy in there, Bob Iger twice, who's in his 70s. That's the single point failure.
We've had this kind of situation happen before with remember when the Wizard of Oz was then turned into the Wiz?
Yes,
and it kind of flipped over that way. So it might not be something of a new situation. It just feels like a demographic fill for money. They say to themselves, we got money from these guys. Who are we missing money from? We feel like we're a little light. Can we go back in? It's like robbing the same bank.
They keep on trying to rob the bank that is going broke every week.
In 1978, I was still a theater projectionist in Scranton. So I worked all the theaters in the Scranton local. So I went from the Maple in Honesdale to the Circle Drive-In all the way down to the Comerford in DuPont, which is now where Walmart sits. So every night I worked and I was the projectionist at a different movie. We were scheduled, this is a funny story, I can't believe you mentioned this. We were scheduled at the West Side in Scranton and the Ritz downtown Scranton to run The Wiz, which of course is the Diana Ross black version of The Wizard of Oz. Do you know that never aired in this area because the theaters kept pulling it because it had absolutely no public interest in running The Wiz. So this is 40 years ago, 1979. Cut to today. The same thing is happening with a different technology. No one is going to go and see The Wiz, Kevin and Tony, because you know why? Because you're forcing it down my throat. If I wanted to see this with a rhythm and blues and an urban contemporary soundtrack, unlike The Wizard of Oz from 1939, I don't want it shoved down my throat. I want to go and see this thing willingly. Life is a pendulum, and it's swinging back to what it did back in the 1970s, my friends.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, absolutely. It still gives a lot of feedback that they could just go back and see how people have or haven't evolved in a marketing situation. So it works.
It does. And going back to going back to one point that Tony made, the deal, and I touched upon the local television with the anchors doing 5 stations in a market. I mean, that eliminates a lot of high-paid anchor men and anchor women. However, about 15 years ago, we started what they called voice tracking radio. So now the person on the air, say at KRZ, the person at night will also voice track 4 or 5 other stations in the chain all across the country. And Jerry Patton, who you'll remember from KRZ, he's the operations manager now in Allentown. So he runs a cluster of 4 or 5 stations, Fox News, Cat Country 96, WLEV, Oldies 99.9, which is now called The Hawk. He's in this market on WBHT. He's in a million different markets. So it's like everybody's doing the same thing. Technology is the savior and the killer of media.
Yeah.
Whoever names these radio stations, 107.9, The Bear.
Exactly. It's
What?
something that's memorable because now they're shoving all these frequencies. It's 105.3, 103 point. But so you gotta either be the hawk or the whale or the bear. It was when I started with doing the Rusty Fender thing in 1990. Everything was magic. There was a magic station in every market. Magic here, Magic 105, Philadelphia, Magic 90, and now we're into these other names. And it's all about being memorable. It's all about remembering. It's the same goofy thing as the name Rusty Fender. If I use my real name, Dale, it's like, Mikolajczyk. It's like, who cares, right? But you name something as ridiculously stupid as Rusty Fender, and someone's going to remember it. It's the way it worked. Now radio's kind of back to using it's cool to use like your own names now because ethnicity is back in. You want the Italian guy on the ethnic show. You want the Irish guy playing James Galway records on a Saturday. Well, again, the pendulum swings back. But
I have beef.
Days,
I have beef, and I need to air the beef.
yes.
Because there are times where I'll put on 97.1 or 98.5 as far as local radio, going home, you're going home from the 9 to 5 job and boom, 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 you toss on the radio. I do not like Elliot with 2 T's. I don't know if you've heard of him, later at night.
Yes.
I don't like his voice. I don't like the way that he portrays everything in his shtick. I feel like he got kind of a weird push, and I don't know where it came from. I feel like there are better qualified radio personalities out there.
But they prove the point because you remember him, you remember the name, you remember the stations you listen to. It proves the point. It was just like this is the early 90s. As both of you gentlemen will remember, Delilah was everywhere. It's like night songs with Delilah. 5 in a row. Here's Endless Love. It's like she was everywhere. And it was a sign of the times that really worked. So
it's crazy that certain people get a weird push, though.
Is
that in the radio industry in general? So I guess my question is there a way, and not necessarily a way, to get a push into the radio industry as far as not having a prolific voice, but you have an entity which you're trying to portray on the radio? Does that get a push all the way through?
That's a great question. I don't know if there's an answer for that, but I think my best answer to you, Tony, is I think it's all about trying to capture a moment. And if you capture that moment from somebody at that time who delivers something either off base or some weird kind of phone calls of somebody, having some kind of relationship problem at night, like Delilah's shtick was all about that. I think you've captured the moment. And I think it's that moment that will continue you to either go on, or then you'll be working at the Chewy warehouse stacking vials of dog food. So it's that point that's the segue in your career.
Well, there is a way, of course, agencies always work. They'll put you in a room with 17, 18 other people that are kind of like you too. So that way the leverage is all on their side, and they'll say, look at how you thought you were original. And well, we kind of have you here a bunch of times, and throw you a low ball number and try to corner you into a space. Representation is always a very big part in play. And I think that's what Tony was getting at, where some people you see an artificial push for, and I could bring her up. We have Lizzo is the artificial push, in my opinion, only because there's Adele gets liposuction, okay, and doesn't tell her production company. So they say, whoa, you look great, but where are our overweight women going to go? Why? If they're going to see you, they're going to say, you've abandoned their fan base.
Always.
So they went ahead and they said, I wonder if we can click another check on this one. We'll go Lizzo. And she's been calling people fat phobic, which last I checked, phobias are a mental illness. I am fat phobic, Rusty, and every day I wake up surrounded by fat people and never knowing if I'm going to get sat on or crushed or whatever. It's a terrible feeling, and for Lizzo to call me out on that, well, I feel like she's phobic. Her phobia is of people who are suffering from phobias. I can play that stupid game all day too. Her talent level isn't really there. She had her dancers allegedly eat
Bananas.
vegetables out of
Yeah.
certain areas at a strip club. Allegedly. We're going to push allegedly on that one because I wasn't there.
Yeah. As well as body shaming her staff as well as dancers through that whole particular series of her European tour, by the way.
And
allegedly.
And Sparky does have a picture. I'm not sure what it is, but we have to flip around the big board. It's about that time. Sparky, what do you got there?
It's a fantastic picture that says, "You want to push? Here you go."
Now, Rusty, I swear to you, that just feels like you are there. You can see that the water in the picture is blue. It's perfectly clear.
It's got a couple sharks in it, I think.
This
or
is
rocks, red rocks.
There's always someone coming along. Like, we're in the middle of course, we're in the middle of Taylor Swift mania right here. And, the greatest songwriters in history, the Jimmy Webb throughout MacArthur Park and ballads like that. There's just such wordsmiths who are probably, trying to hang themselves with their own shoelaces in their basement when someone comes out with a song that says, you will never, 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 never love you again. And it's kind of like, and it sells 400 million copies. How do you analyze a formula that puts that in major success? You can't. It plays.
But they've made it. But they have done it.
Yeah, well, they have done it.
Yeah.
Yeah, they have. Yeah. They have done it. Yeah, but it's the voice of an entirely new generation. It happened with 100%. The Beatles.
Here we go, Rusty. I got it for you right here. But she wears short shorts. I wear T-shirts. She's cheer captain, and I'm on the bleachers dreaming about the day when you wake up and find that what you're looking for has been here the whole time. I can't believe time rhymed with find there. I'm shocked as much as you are. I'm just completely appalled. If you can see that I'm the one who understands you, been here all along, so why can't you see? You belong with me. We've heard these kind of songs of reminiscing from old love, and she's tapping into something that you've heard a million times. I've heard a million times. So we don't see it as special. The kids, they grow up, they see it as shoved in their face a million times, and until they grow up and they see her as a singer-songwriter. Now, Bob Dylan, I'm a big Bob Dylan fan. Happy birthday, Bob. 83 years old, a couple days ago. That's what Gordon Lightfoot, that's what I count as like a singer-songwriter type.
Right.
And where you are putting such mystical twists on words and imagery and scenarios where you feel like you can write a movie 100% just based on this song. And Taylor Swift just doesn't do it for me. And I think it kind of speaks of where we are as a society in some general aspects.
That's your generation, though, Kevin. Sticking up for them. I mean, when Dylan came out with "Blowin' in the Wind" in 1961, that wasn't even considered to be folk at that time. The Kingston Trio was folk. So Dylan, morphed from "Blowin' in the Wind" to the tail end of his top 40 career, which was "Lay Lady Lay." In 1975, one of the greatest records ever. Never gets any airplay. I used to play it all the time.
And that just proves that he could sing. He actually did have a singing voice.
That's right. That's exactly right. And Gordon Lightfoot, Rainy Day People. I mean, Sundown, the wreck of the Edmund Fitzgerald. You're right. You could do a movie from the wordsmithing of these people. Taylor Swift knows about 12 words. It's the truth. It's generational, Kevin. It's generational.
Now I am going to add this because there are probably some people sitting in their chairs now that are like, "Oh no, you're bashing on Taylor's." No, we are not bashing on Taylor Swift.
No.
And the fact is that she has a great game. She's got a great management team that pushes a lot of things for her, and not necessarily her good girl image, and things that she's been doing publicly, even privately. Always get out there in general. There's never a dull moment in the life of a superstar, especially today.
And she unknowingly Disneyed her romantic life by making a parody of every song that she writes is about someone that she was breaking up with, along with the one demographic she was missing was between the ages of 29 to 50. football fans specifically. And now you got her going out with Travis Kelce for a good amount of time now. I think they've been together for a year and a half. Sparky's got something to say about it with the big board. Ryan Seacrest wears jean shorts while I am trying to date a man from every sport. That's Sparky's take on it right there. Right, let's see if we can Taylor Swift it. Ryan Seacrest wears jean shorts while I'm trying to. I can't do it. I don't have that.
Now there was a funny thing that happened. I think it was last year with Ed Sheeran. Did you follow anything with that? Because he had said something about he had gotten sued about using the same 4 chords. Now, it's the same 4 chords that you hear in music all the time, just played in a different set. But the same 4 chords were used in a different song, and somebody tried to sue him for music rights.
And you know, I think the last successful lawsuit goes back to George Harrison's "My Sweet Lord" and the Chiffons' "You're So Fine," and I think that was the last plagiarism lawsuit, Kevin and Tony, that actually produced maybe $30,000 or $40,000 in residual royalties and copyright. So we're talking a song from 1970, George Harrison, and a song from 1963 with the Chiffons. So it just goes to show you how really tough that is. Like music, there's only a certain amount of musical progressions that you can do. It's just mixing things around. It's very, very difficult to sue for plagiarism. You can sue for anything, Tony. Try and win at it.
Yeah, good luck with that.
It's tough. I mean, I wanted to touch on what we'll just call and see if we can grab it. See if you would know it offhand. Frequency 590.
Yes. The mighty.
Where it might be 32 degrees outside, it's always warm in here.
The WARM phenomenon started back in 1958. WARM, Scranton, Wilkes-Barre, a 50,000 watt AM clear channel. Oh, not a clear channel, but a directional station at night. Their antennas were in Falls, Pennsylvania, which is kind of midway between Wilkes-Barre and Scranton, Pennsylvania. You couldn't get them. You couldn't get them in Williamsport because it was directional, but you could get them in Newark, New Jersey. Those were the days of AM, amplitude modulated radio, and they were so successful. They brought the Four Seasons, they brought everybody in the world to Rocky Glen Park. Concerts had 5,000 and 6,000 people back in the 60s. They went from elevator music, from Muzak to rock and roll overnight in 1958. And they rode the crest. They had 7 original DJs. There's only one alive. His name is Tommy Woods. He was one of the sensational 7 DJs, counting everybody from Terry McNulty to Harry West to Joey Schaefer, right on down. They were a phenomenon. WARM, gentlemen, probably would have continued for about maybe 10 years longer, except that AM was dying in 1980, and the inclusion of FM happened on October 23rd, 1980, when WKRZ came into the market. It's really funny. One of my first jobs was I was a TV engineer at WBRE Channel 28 in Wilkes-Barre. Well, WBRE TV, downstairs, we were on the 2nd floor on 62 South Franklin Street. WBRE TV also owned WBRE AM and FM. It was a combo, meaning that the same news, it was a news talk information stations, AM and FM. And they were a simulcast, so it was on both WBRE AM and FM. WBRE AM and FM became WKRZ AM and FM on October 23rd, 1980. They did it on a Thursday because all ratings, whether you're TV or radio, ratings start on a Thursday. That's why people will say, hey, how come they're giving a car away on this radio station? It always seems to be a Thursday, because the ratings run Thursday through Wednesday, just so people know that. It's been like that since the 1950s when they were giving away, coffee, Maxwell House coffee. So the ratings run Thursday through Wednesday is the rating period, because they want to get that weekend, Saturday and Sunday listening in. And if FM wasn't being born locally in 1980, WARM would have still run probably 10 more years on a great 10-year run, even with a horrible signal, that fades out when you go under a bridge and you get all the lightning strikes in a rainstorm. So Warm was the victim of technology and not programming.
Yeah, I guess it had its demise in 2009. They finally turned the lights off on WARM. But
it was a million formats. They went all sports. They went Scott Shannon's Oldies, which again was like a Ryan Seacrest deal. Scott Shannon was the program director at Z100 in Newark, New York at the time. And it went, it was just this continuous loop of oldies with an occasional Scott Shannon, recorded liner in between. And that was quite successful, but you're on AM. It's kind of like trying to build a plant that manufactures black and white TVs. I mean, it's a great medium, but who's going to do that? It's AM. I used to teach at Wilkes University and Marywood University, same time I was doing traffic. And the students I had, and this is going back 9 years, the students I had didn't even know what FM radio was.
It's the weirdest thing because people get very particular of who they get their news or even traffic from, where they say to themselves, do I get it from Fast Freddy? Oh, I'd rather Rusty Fender. And I'm thinking to myself, I know both of them. They're both reading the same thing, basically.
Yeah.
The delivery is the same, but it's
he did a little after me. He took over later on after I did it for 27 years. And back then, of course, you keep forgetting there was no internet. So I would get all my information from PennDOT, via fax, that they'd be doing some guide rail work or paving next week on a Thursday, 8 o'clock in the morning till 3. It's like now it's so instantaneous that when they wrap up work. But back in those days, there was very little information before the information superhighway.
There are phones that have been taken out of the highway because everybody has a phone. There are phones that if you used to get in a horrible car accident, for anybody out there watching and listening, if you were ever in a horrible car accident, arm broken, leg mangled, you'd see a sign that says there's a phone about 1.5 miles from here.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. And you take your mangled body and find a phone and say,
you'd have to crawl to a call box.
You're right. That's a great point. Every mile there was a blue phone and it says 2,000 feet to the next phone. And a lot of times you'd open that phone box, there's no phone because somebody ripped the phone right out of the thing. So it's like you were dead in the water on either way on that deal.
People will steal anything, even if they don't need it. There's
right. They'll sell the copper wire, in the headset. So it's like, but you're right. And you know what's really crazy, guys? That wasn't that long ago. Wasn't that long ago.
Well, we're in the year 2024, so I think they took the last payphone out of the area around 2015. So
you know what? That actually gives us a little segue, Kevin.
Oh,
it does give us a little segue into something that Rusty Fender's really been working on for a while now. But it is near and dear to my heart, only because it involves my childhood for a very long time. Of course, we're talking about the Rocky Glen Park videotape, and it's called One Last Look, of course, with Rusty Fender's Shadow Steel, whatever you'd like to throw on there. But give the people a little bit of what that particular video is about as well.
Sure, and you live near the park, as you said, Tony. What I did back in 1987, that I had in '87, I had, because I was working in New York City, and quite frankly, had a great salary. You need a great salary to work in New York City. It costs you $100 a day to park. So absolutely. So I had the luxury of having a brand new RCA camcorder. It was OmniVision, VHS, the big cassettes. And, at that time, the camera cost $1,500, which would be about $9,000 in today's day and age. That's 38 years ago.
It's like getting one of those car pack phones,
right?
That were like cellular, but not really connected to a giant battery.
That's correct. Yeah. So on a Sunday afternoon, I had to work one overnight at NBC. So at 30 Rockefeller Plaza. So Sunday night at midnight, I started. That was the way I got my 4-day week. So I worked one overnight, and that day I was off because I had to come back home to do Saturday Night Live at the Oldies every week, from New York City. So on Sunday, I just took this camcorder, and people ask about the show, like, what made you go over to the park? I said, well, the park closed a couple days before that. and I wanted to get something just to use this camera maybe for an hour or two. Quite frankly, not to be corny, but something I could probably watch on my VHS or my Betamax, maybe years from now to see the old rides and stuff like that. Not knowing on that September afternoon in 1987 that the park would never reopen. That winter, it was sold to a New Jersey firm who was going to build condominiums on the shore overlooking the lake. Absolutely. Yep. So I had accidentally the last couple of hours of video of the park. So I knew at that time, and again, we're going back 37 and a half years, 1987.
Oh, yeah.
I knew someday I would do a television show on this. And this came to fruition. Last year, we started putting it together. We had a pretty big team, but my partner, who is Professor Eric Ruggiero, he's the chairman of Wilkes University's Integrated Media Department. He and I put this program together, and we pitched it to a few stations. And of course, in this area, it was golden. So it went to the #1 station, WNEP, and they put it on WNEP.com, and then WNEP Plus, which is their streaming service. As you gentlemen mentioned, streaming is everything. And
streaming
people,
is king now.
Well, wait, people are coming to be going, wait a minute, you're in this business for 52 years. Why don't you get it on TV? I said, well, 16's going to put it at 5 o'clock in the morning on a Sunday. What good is that? I want it on demand, addressable streaming. Go to it when you want it. I want streaming. I don't want it on the air. Would it be nice to be on the air at 2 o'clock on a Sunday afternoon? Yeah. But what do you think? They're gonna preempt football to put a Rocky Glenn show on? What are you, out of your mind?
This way, people live a busy lifestyle. You
Correct.
can reach a bigger audience if they can watch it at their own convenience, and they can sit down, they can press pause. I remember, and you do too, we all remember when you couldn't just get up and take a piss because holy crap, it's not on commercial yet and you're gonna miss something. These kids have a convenience where you can just pop on anything at any time, and it's the world that they woke up into. But yeah, getting back to Rocky Glenn, I'm sorry,
Kevin. It's like the days, as they call it, of linear television are over. I remember as a kid saying, holy cow! I have to remember that Friday night at 8 o'clock is the Wild Wild West, one of my favorite shows on TV. I have to be home. I have to get off my bike early and come home at 8 o'clock. And now you stream it at 3 in the afternoon or 3 in the morning. The days of appointment TV are gone 15, 20 years ago.
They tested it out to see how much people would pay to not have commercials. Remember the TiVo experience?
Exactly.
People were paying for TiVo, and they're like, wait a second, they're making all this money because nobody wants to see commercials. Well, what if we could see what our people are watching live and just give them a streaming service, and we could see exactly what is popular at the time, and you get more accurate ratings that way. The only thing that's
Absolutely.
a problem is TV shows don't have room to grow anymore. They don't have that one bad season. And if they do have one bad season, they're like, maybe you're just not a good show. And then bam, they pull the plug on it too quick.
You're back where you started, Kevin. So now the program now has over 17,500 views in a couple of weeks on WNEP.com, and we're on 6 or 7 other stations in the state at the same time. However, now you have the domino effect, where when you watch Rocky Glen Park, One Last Look on WNEP.com, every break has commercials in it online. So it has commercials for Perkins. It has this week. It's sponsored by Raymore and Flanagan. So you're just switching the same idea to a different medium.
It makes the user feel more in control on YouTube, though, when they hit the skip ad button, right? If they don't pay for YouTube, they hit the skip ad button.
That's correct.
To be honest, it's the same thing that's happening with cable television. Cable television, of course, is being labeled as a dinosaur, while all of these other streaming apps and streaming platforms are coming out, taking the place of cable television.
They've what are they called? They've reinvented the same wheel that they've had before.
Maybe
we put rubber around it. It's like, wait, didn't we have rubber before? Yeah, but this is environmentally safe rubber.
You guys are going to hate me for this comment, but if I were running YouTube, if I were running Vimeo, if I were running these services, quite frankly, as a business, and we're talking about this as a business, and both you gentlemen agree, but if I were running both of those platforms, I would not allow you to skip that ad, because just like in the market that these places like Procter and Gamble and all the big advertisers pay for that market, that they're not getting their bang for the buck. And I'm all about the Fortune 500 advertiser. They're paying for this platform. So I would not allow you to do that. And if everybody, again, if everybody
now Rusty, they do. There's a reason. There's a reason why they have the skip ad button, right?
Yes. Yes.
And it's unlike any other reason you'd want to know. You hit the button skip ad, and YouTube knows that you were still there.
That's correct.
And once they know that you're still there, you're still an active user. They're like, this person hasn't walked away. They hit the button. They put a lot of them in the block, sort of thing.
You're 100% right, but Kevin, somebody's getting cheated on that deal, and I'm not. I don't have a Superman cape on here because I'm all for what's good and what's honest. But the advertiser gets cheated because they're paid, and their next ad block is based on the hits of the previous ad they ran on that platform. Someone's getting cheated here, and I quite frankly don't think that's right. Sorry about that.
I think the advertisement companies don't, if you hit the skip ad thing, they don't get charged the X amount of percentage if their ad gets skipped over so much.
Probably.
But there's a compensation pattern.
There is, but what
there is a compensation pattern. Yeah.
Right.
The fact is that not necessarily that. Let's say you pay, I don't know, let's use an imaginary number, $1,000 for every particular commercial that you're running for an ad. Granted, it's probably way more than that or way less than that, but we'll just use $1,000 as an explanation. So let's say you're using $1,000 and somebody is skipping past that. They have what's called stationary, if I remember, stationary advertisements, and then they have static advertisements as well.
The banners,
yeah.
Correct, the banner.
The whole thing right across the bottom.
Correct.
And then they lock you in, because I know they do have some particular streaming platforms that actually lock you into a 30-second or a 1-minute advertisement automatically. There's no way around it anymore.
They're the big bucks, Tony. They're the big ones. You ain't gonna skip those, pal. They're the big ones.
Yeah, definitely.
There are those. Remember those old commercials they would have, and these guys, you get in trouble for such subliminal messages intentionally put into their commercials.
Yep, it's true. Goes back to the movie days. The way they're making money now is as you probably know, if you buy an ad package, and that's usually maybe 20, 25, 50 spots on an actual linear television station, so an over-the-air broadcast, they'll bonus your ads to go and cover their online streaming. So that has morphed now. Streaming is so popular that now they're selling streaming and they're giving you bonus ads on TV. Like, this is the craziest business. If you don't like this business, wait 5 minutes and it's going to change.
Yeah, that's true. Rusty, I want to get into not necessarily one particular thing, but I know you are a scientist at heart. Now, of course, you have a scientific background. You have a lot of different ideas. But what are you the most proud of? Because I've heard a story many a times ago, something about the Valdez oil spill.
It wasn't the Valdez. It was the Horizon, the Deepwater Horizon. Back in 2001, my idea was used out of over, I think, 500,000 ideas to cap the Deepwater Horizon oil spill in the Gulf of Mexico. So it was the BP oil spill around, I think, for 84, 87 days. And yes, my background, actually, I hold a bachelor's degree in electrical engineering from the University of Scranton, and a master's from Duke University in rocket dynamics, propulsion systems engineering, and aerospace. So
We're going to dive into that whole situation as well in a few minutes. But
this was more oceanographic. But if you can engineer a fix in space, you can engineer a fix a mile down under the Gulf of Mexico. So I came up with this plan, which was nothing more than a hydraulic and a pneumatic wall anchor. You gentlemen know that if you're going to hang a very, very heavy picture on a wall and you have a wall board, what you're going to do is you're going to deploy this clamp, and it's going to spread out so it gives you more surface area so the picture will not pull off the wall. this was the same idea that I had, which I pitched to BP when I called them on their 800 number when this thing was going on. And I called them, and it was they were fascinated. It was such a simple.
Now try to paint us a picture of this, because
Sure.
I'm just imagining, hey, you're sitting on a toilet one day, and all of a sudden you get a burst of this picture in your head.
No, it was pretty funny. Actually, Barbara, my wife, and I were watching TV. Actually, watching the Discovery Channel on a Sunday afternoon, and it was like, the Discovery Channel every day did this whole thing that said, day number 17, the oil spill continues. So we're up to like day number like 68 or something.
Kevin did the voiceover for that, by the way.
Yeah, I did. Yeah, it's the way all those guys sound like that. So they had this picture of this old man in a rowboat on the Gulf of Mexico with like a fish net scooping out the actual tar from the surface of the tar, which, the salt water makes the oil turn into like an asphalt.
Yeah,
exactly. And Barbara turns to me and says, "This is absolutely horrible. This guy in 100 degrees, and can you do something about this?" And I looked at her. I said, What exactly would you like me to do about this? I said, "Well, you're an engineer." I said, "Well, I think that every idea has kind of been like tossed about on this deal."
I gotta. This is too funny. This is once again a woman says, Dale,
what's wrong with you?
What's going on?
Yeah.
Can't you do something?
I told this story. I told this story on a million stations, from KRZ to Froggy to WILK. It's the greatest story ever. And she says, "Well, you should really do something about this." And she says, "You must have an idea on this." I said, "Well, I do have an idea about this, but I don't think they want to hear about somebody from Old Forge, Pennsylvania, calling them with another idea. They have people from MIT and Harvard and Yale.
And you know what?
Working.
If you were talking to a guy right there, your guy friend would have said, 'You're right. That makes sense.' It would have ended right there."
You're right. You're right. And I said, "Okay, tell you what. When I get to the station tomorrow morning, which would be a Monday, let me look on the computer and see what the deal is." So the next day, Monday, on my lunch hour, I call up BP.com, and there's this flashing red banner on the website that says scientists, college professors, scientists, technicians. Can you help us? And it had an 800 number. I said, "Okay, so I'll bite." I called the 800 number, and it didn't go to BP. It went to like a call center. I know that you gentlemen sometimes get these calls where you from a credit card company, and you hear a million people in the background in their cubicles talking. So it went to a call center, and they said, how can we help you?" I said, "Well, I'd like to speak to somebody." I said, I'm an aerospace engineer, and I have an idea. Not that you probably want to hear from me about this deal. And I said, "I'm a college professor, Wilkes University." And they said, "Sir, hold on a second. Someone will probably want to speak with you." And they put me through, like about 6 or 7 minutes later, to BP Engineering in Houston, Texas. And I needed a lot of information from them.
That's crazy. That's crazy. First of all, let's set up the phone call. It's you calling up, and you're like, "Hi, I'd like to talk to somebody about this BP oil crisis." And they're like, Sir, you I don't know about this. No, I have a really great idea. I should really talk to somebody. Well,
you can see the person. You just imagine the person on the other end going, "I got a live one here. Listen,
Let me check this out. I got some idiot on the phone talking about
eventually get off the phone, and you're like, "Barbara, I think I got a car warranty now."
No, right, exactly. And you hear them going, "Sir, hold on. I'm going to put this on speaker. Hold on, sir. Could you repeat that again?" And you can just envision all the people listening to you and laughing like crazy.
After 1,000 phone calls of duds.
Exactly. But this went to a real call center that BP or whomever was paying for. So it kind of did have a little validity behind this. And when I said I'm a college professor and aerospace engineer, I think, man, like this guy's kind of like weird. Like maybe we should listen to this clown, And they got through, and it turns out that weeks and weeks we worked on this, and I needed a lot of information. I needed information on the pipe. It was 18 inches. It was made of carbon tungsten steel. It was 18 inches in diameter, and they had 2 robots at the bottom. You're below crush depth. So crush depth is about not quite a mile. So you're 3,800 feet. You got a mile is 4,000. So the robots had only 2 appendages. So they didn't have like right. They didn't have like a thumb for use of a better term. So they could only do so much. So when they were trying to cut the tungsten carbide pipe, because it was sheared off, it was broken off. You know what kind of force it takes to break tungsten carbide steel? Like that's like breaking a girder in half. And when they did, they made the round 18-inch pipe elliptical. It was more egg-shaped because they bent it a little bit. And there was an eccentricity of 2% now in that pipe. So I had to design something with 16, make that 13 layers of HDPE. So HDPE is high density polyethylene plastic. It's the same stuff that a liquid Tide bottle is made of, that orange plastic, but it's not, that's HDPE4. I needed HDPE2, which was more flexible. And there were layers when this
not necessarily a polycarbonate type of material,
that's correct. Just something to slow it down. But when the wall anchor, this hydraulic wall anchor went in, before it deployed and spread out, the pipe had to be dimpled. So the dimples ran every 3 inches around the 18-inch pipe. So it had a little teat inside for this to grab onto, like a little indentation inside, pushing from the outside in. And then the plastic would slow down, it would slow down the oil coming out at 2,500 pounds per square inch. If you put your finger for 1 second in front of the outflow of that, you wouldn't have a finger. It would cut your finger and your bone. It was coming out. That's how fast this stuff comes out of the ocean floor, the oil, to these rigs.
So, I need to ask before you go on.
Yes.
How many alliterations did you have before finally coming to the final culprit, full circle?
I needed a lot of information from BP Engineering, and then they conferenced me with an actual ship in the Gulf. So I needed a lot of information, which was kind of proprietary, but they kind of clued me in on this stuff. And, after I found out that they were dumping bales of hay and kind of like mud and stuff, like I said, holy cow, my idea is like Buck Rogers compared to some of this stuff.
Yeah.
Seriously. So that's why I called, despite whether they were going to ridicule me or not. And it worked. And
if they want to ridicule you, they're using mud and hay,
to slow it down. And the funny part about this, because the next question people ask is like, well, how much did I make on this? I said, do you know that I didn't even get a $25 gift card for one of their gas stations? I got nothing from that.
That's crazy.
You didn't even get one share of stock.
Nope. When big business needs you, they need you. And when they're done, they don't call you. So quite frankly, I wasn't looking for anything and I didn't get anything. So that was the answer.
By the British again.
Yep, absolutely. British Petroleum. And
damn you and your tea.
Here's a great side story, Kevin and Tony, that it angered me that a lot of people were like Harvard and Yale and the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. They were sending like an inquiry in with an amount before they gave them the idea. They wanted an amount of money for that, where I just called with no money involved. And by the way,
BP was so ready to sit there and wait for somebody to do it for free.
That's correct.
Yeah.
And I must give credit where credit is due. Acker Drill and Engineering, Mike Acker from Clark Summit, they built the actual projectile free of charge that went into the pipe to stop the breach with the layers of PVC, of HDPE2 on there. So Acker Drill and Engineering, I don't think they're any longer in business, but they were an engineering, a mechanical engineering firm. They're up on Shady Lane Road. They were the people that heard me talking about this on 16 and 22 and 28 in the area. And they came to the aid by designing this free. So there were quite a few people involved in my idea on that. And they were certainly very, very good to do that. And it worked. And it slowed things down enough to get like a 3-story, so 40 feet. So 36 feet in a story. So a 40-foot valve head over this pipe. And then, of course, they had all the valves where they can control the flow of this deal on the ocean floor. So that was very, very exciting. And in fact, Channel 16 every 5 years they run my piece where the reporters came to the station, and they still run my piece in what they call their video vault about this local guy that stopped this whole deal, and that gave a lot of credibility. And again, I still didn't even get any, I didn't even get a free Mountain Dew that Tony's drinking from one of their convenience stores. So
Not even a free Mountain Dew.
That's the way it works. That's the way
British
it works.
Petroleum, if you're listening out here, you're welcome, and I hope you choke on it.
Son of a
They
bitches.
feel like
I hope
British
they die on a
Petroleum.
cracker.
British
Tony,
Petroleum sounds like the type
Tony,
of company that would just say, like, how much should we charge the workers?
Tony, if they gave me $1 million, they would only put me in a higher tax bracket, so it's fine.
That's true. What's money, anyways, right? What's money?
Exactly. But that was a great project, and I got a lot of publicity from around the country and around the world. Stations, WPVI from Philadelphia, Channel 6 came up to the area interviewing at the station. It was really good. It was really good for the name, for the show, for Under the Shadow Steel name. It was really a good time, and it's still not forgotten. And I get asked about that at least maybe once every couple of months. Somebody will say, "Did you have something to do with that oil thing?" It's like, yes, I did, a long time ago. So thanks for asking about that, Tony.
So there's a comment in the in our comments as far as on Facebook Live. Of course, we take all of our comments seriously. From a Wayne Hadley, and he says, "Does Rusty have any engineering ideas to stop the massive amount of potholes in Northeast Pennsylvania?"
Yeah, now, Rusty, this is a good question because it feels like somebody lost the ingredients to concrete one day, and they've never recovered it. And I know what you're thinking. This is the year 2024, Kev.
And
we have
especially with your
cars
background.
now. We don't have to worry about anything like potholes because all of our cars float on happy thoughts right now. There are no bumps in the road.
Damn you, British Petroleum. Damn you, BP.
Leave it to Wayne to ask that question. It's kind of like, we're trying to put man on Mars, and we still can't do things about the pothole situation here. But believe it or not, there is, and this is a funny line, but there is more concrete and asphalt testing these days with core samples. In the old days, I say this every day, in the 20s and 30s and 40s, they paved the road. There was no testing. There was no moisture content. There was no air content. There was no slurry. There was no slump. There was no kind of testing at all. And these roads are still holding up 100 years later. Now you put a road in 2 years later, it's gone. I think that it has a lot to do with the climate. I think the materials that they're using now, even though they're more researched and developed, I don't think they stand up under. And this is another thing.
Would you classify them as substandard materials?
I would guess that he's trying to say it in the most polite way possible. They're going cheap on it, and they're going hardcore cheap. And then they're telling the taxpayers, if you want us to go more expensive, we can always raise your taxes. And
to be honest, because of your background in the in PennDOT, your elaborate, of course, knowledge of things that have gone through, especially in the state of Pennsylvania. There's been a lot of controversy as far as where the money has gone throughout the years, and especially through the whole PennDOT scandal that they've had with roads, bridges, and in the such, of course, for probably about 15 to 20 years in general. Money that has been gas taxes, the turnpike, all of these federal grants and money that has come to Pennsylvania via the government and stuff like that.
See, the reason this podcast is so successful is because you people are, you guys are really well researched and well oriented on this, and you're correct. I think the biggest, again, single point failure was a couple years ago when we have the highest gas tax in the country.
100%.
And 100%.
Number three.
Yeah, exactly. And all that money collected 3 or 4 years ago for the gas tax went to pay all the state police overtime for the killer who shot the 2 state troopers in Monroe County and Pike County, and the whole
into
search.
The retirement fund of the state troopers as well.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And I know, again, as a PennDOT engineer and employee, I understand that I know, and again, from working with the state in various iterations for the last 9 years, I do understand their point. And their point is that it kind of, Tony and Kevin, kind of all comes out of the same pocket, the same coffers for that deal. You know, if you have a dam failure in Pittsburgh, it's going to take precedent over putting 3 bridges in on 81 in northeastern Pennsylvania. I do understand that. I think that was the biggest it actually infuriated me. All this, you know, you go through all this of what we need, and we're going to collect this gas tax 100%, and then they didn't fix one bridge. Well, you know, we had to pay the state
Where
police
did the money
overtime
go? And the fact is that not necessarily even that when people were put on the radar for this particular funding in general, it was probably about 10, 15 years ago. And when they did that, it was roughly a couple $2 billion in general. And they increased it exponentially every particular year for the gas tax in general.
You know what kind of sums up exactly how we're dealing with that, with money going to the government and money spent, and it's a perfect symbolic picture I can paint real quick. When the bridge in Pittston was being shut down, politicians and other people had a dinner on the bridge while people were living under the bridge. That is symbolic exactly where we are right now.
Boom.
We thought that it was a fancy thing.
One correction. One correction, and you're right. It was the Water Street Bridge. However, that was a private restaurant, Ricasa in Pittston, who had permission to do that. So as much as I'm anti-politicians, the politicians kind of just granted that. It wasn't like they threw a party for their own representatives and senators. So that is kind of with exception on that deal, that it was a closed bridge. There was no danger of having a dinner for Ricasa, you know, owned by Rob Friedman at the time. So that's kind of an exceptional point, a very good point, though, with people living under the bridge. But that was not really per se a political, a political night of profit. Is what I'm getting at.
It was a let's have a party on something that should have been done years and years.
That's right.
And that's my point exactly. There are things that should have been done in an exponential amount of time with the money that they have had through those particular years, and zero got done. It got allocated into different funding. People didn't care because they were spending out pennies on a dollar. And now that they're spending, 20, 30, 40 cents per dollar now, they're like, ooh, where's my money gone? Hence, why the FBI were in this particular area as far as all of the different politics. And I hate to mix politics with different particular companies, but it really does mean a lot. Excuse me. So my question is where did all the money go that we're supposed to fix the problems that are leading into the problems of today?
And again, that comes from the DGS, which is the Department of General Services of the state. And again, I think you would probably need some type of you'd need some legal machinery to get into the process and see 100%. Where everything, right? Yeah, I see.
Of course.
See, that's the whole problem with that. Now again, Kevin and Tony, it's I'm just not picking on this state. It's like this everywhere. In fact, it's worse in other states like Illinois.
Every other state. Yeah,
absolutely. However, the real problem is with a huge organization with 170,000 employees that covers everything from the state police to DEP to DER. The problem is that the machine runs so slowly. Now they're talking about you gentlemen mentioned this, the replacement of the Water Street and the Fort Jenkins Bridge in Pittston. The environmental studies won't even be done until 2027. That's the earliest you could even break ground. Now,
it's a time crawl. in general.
Exactly. 4 years of studying the fish and studying the outflow, because the Butler mine tunnel drainage, the toxic drain is like 50 feet from the Fort Jenkins Bridge.
It's
So
right
you
there.
have to
Yeah.
right. You have to look at everything on this deal. So you're talking 4 years, 3 or 4 years, just for and that's not withstanding the 2 years of construction it's going to take to build a parallel bridge next to it, and then do all the clover leaf ramps of the on and off ramps on the Pittston side and the West Pittston side. It's just everything moves
Even a better
slow.
example, Rusty. You remember when back in the day they said we're making this bridge and you pay 5 cents until we pay for what we had the bridge for, right?
Right.
Of
Right.
a total form of fiscal responsibility, and then it went up to 10 cents, and then went up to 25 cents, and then they figured they'd charge $1. And you say, hey, when is this bridge getting paid off? They said, we already did pay it off 5, 10, 15 years ago. We just figured we'd make some more money. That way we can maintain the road that will be forever used.
Look at New York City, $18 to go through the Holland, Lincoln, or George Washington Bridge. $18 for a passenger vehicle.
Yeah.
They get 1 million vehicles a week. That's $18 million. That's even without the tractor trailers, which is $18 per axle, and there's six axles on a 53-foot tractor trailer. That that didn't cost. They could build a new Holland tunnel every year for what they take in 1 week, and they say, well, it goes to subsidize and help mass transit. They have an answer for every single question you have before you ask the question. That's the problem.
Yeah, that's the free-forming capitalism meeting socialism area where both people are buddy-buddy with each other, and the only people they have to manipulate is the dumbest common denominator.
Absolutely. It is the buddy system. Can't agree with you more.
Yep. The most insane thing that I've probably heard of lately was the Francis Scott Key Bridge down in Baltimore.
Yes.
Of course, with the ship crashing into it, unfortunately killing 6 or 8 people.
Yep.
Construction workers that were working on the bridge in general, and that is a crazy tragedy. A crazy tragedy that probably should have never happened in general. And a lot of people are like, "Oh, what happened? You're never gonna know the true story. Just the fact that 2 systems shut down, and I'm not making a conspiracy theory. I'm not gonna get into that whole route in general. But 2 systems shut down on the ship, engaging it to smash into this particular bridge.
On a much lighter note, Tony, real quick, we have a comment here, one more from Wayne Hadley saying, wait, all this time and I never knew when my mom would play Saturday night oldies, Rusty Fender was also Shadow Steel. How many times do you get
buckle in your seatbelts.
Buckle in your
seatbelts. Shadow Steel.
I love this Wayne guy. Fender. Wayne is the greatest. It is true. And what, getting back to the bridge, Tony, what really bothers me is that now, the government is supposed to build this.
And that's exactly where I was going with it.
Yeah. Why should we pay for this? Why doesn't the company that caused this problem, they're insured? Well, they have this old 1854 treaty deal that says that they have a cap on the limit. Like, what is the story with this? You caused the major failure of a top 50 market bridge, which halted shipping for I don't understand the mindset of these people.
This is America. Treaties were meant to be broken. We've broken so many treaties. It doesn't matter. We give people a piece of paper and then shoot them in the head when they walk away and be like, well, that was pretty easy.
No, Rusty, as a mechanical engineer, right? Now, as a mechanical engineer, I had the same thought, right? When I was thinking of this and I seen this video overplaying in my head, right? What would be the first thing that you would implement in the bottom of that particular set of keystones that would prevent that from ever happening? What would you implement on a mechanical engineering level?
Well, first of all, I would have a massive island of concrete at the base, which holds up the abutments and also the piers for that. A massive, like they do at the Mackinac Bridge in Michigan and the Golden Gate Bridge. They have islands where it's almost like a community. So if something rams into that, the ship is going to sink. So they didn't have this there because, of course, it was before code and it was just the way it was designed. people don't know that that bridge is probably sitting on a 24 by 24-inch metal plate that holds up that truss suspension bridge on something that old. So there's a lot of ifs, there's a lot of buts, and there's a lot of things that were done when that bridge was built back then. But it looked like that bridge was prime to really, it was destined for failure. Yeah, it was, but why, help me with this. Why don't we go after the people who cause these problems? It's always like somebody damages this and we say, oh, well, we'll take care of that. Why should we take care of that? Help me with this.
100%. I have no idea. And not to say because of modern politics, trying to get
it feels like modern politics, because if whoever was running the boat company knows somebody from the bridge administration or whatever from the state of Maryland, it feels like that, because not too many million or multi-million-dollar mulligans are given around these days. Where you're just like, you know what, guys, don't worry, we got it. You sure? It was our boat. If I drove my car into somebody's house and all their family's dead now, except for one guy, that one guy is not going to say, you know what, I got this. I'm fine. It's not a thing.
What's truly amazing is that just like the John F. Kennedy assassination back in '63, where we had the Zapruder film of that. In this day and age, there was even a camera looking at that bridge when the lights went out on the ship and the bridge went down. We have video now we have cameras looking at cameras. It's like, if we didn't have that, this would be the ultimate conspiracy theory, and who knows, it still might be. But we have cameras of every angle of every single incident that happens, and that still doesn't seem to help. I mean, do you understand that?
We have all video evidence we have all video evidence except for 1 hour of the Jeffrey Epstein thing, but that's a whole other subject right there. That's apparently when the cameras took a break.
Right. Well, that's when they changed the beta tapes in the machine at the prison.
They were like,
really?
Weird enough. Coincidentally, I mean, we were gonna have it. Well, what about the officers on that day? Oh my God, boy, did they have a long lunch.
Coffee break.
There's you both know that there's always a missing hour. It's just unbelievable.
The generator shut down.
It's like
Marky, what do you got on the big board right there?
We are waiting for the big board, Sparky.
Just flip it around,
Sparky.
Flip it around.
We're waiting on it. What is
it?
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yep, we can hear you.
I was working down in the Gulf of Mexico.
Oh my God, Sparky was down there at the Gulf of Mexico, Rusty.
Video evidence.
But
there it is. This is better than the claw game. Look at that. As you can see, he is there. He's got the.
There's the gentleman in the small rowboat, just flicking his fishing rod over the side.
It went a little something like that. Am I did she have it just a plug, right?
Great. That's great. That is an accurate depiction of what happened, Sparky.
For our non-viewing audience, Sparky just drew the most specific picture that he witnessed when he was working in the Gulf of Mexico before our show, and he's had that on hand for a long time. We always appreciate Sparky's world travels that he can bring to us on the show here. And if you didn't know which one was the fishing pole, the guy was holding a fishing pole. Nothing sexually explicit, of course. We try to keep it PG-13.
Family show.
Yeah, although if your 13-year-olds are up at this time of night, you're a terrible parent.
What the hell are they watching this show for?
What the heck?
Exactly.
We have we do have a couple weird comments in here. The one is hello from the Deadpool Uber driver, and Trisha Tallarico Lentikowski says he told me at church. And I don't know what that comment means, but I figure I just read it anyways because
apparently Trisha Tallarico Lentowski, who goes to church with you, she's I guess a good friend of yours as well.
She's the best. She teaches actually at Scranton High School.
At Scranton
High
School,
School. Yes, absolutely. Yeah,
she's a very good friend of mine. Very good friend of mine.
There we go. She's the greatest. I speak at the School for Career Day a lot, and Trish is one of the best. I'm glad you know her, Tony.
She is pretty amazing. So, Rusty, what is on the horizon for you, sir? Because we're gonna do a little bit of a wrap up. We're a little bit over an hour. What is in your future?
You know, this is the Rocky Glen show, and thanks so much, gentlemen, for promoting that once again. This is a I guess I'll never retire. This is another hobby that became a career, and we have 2 more shows now on the offing. The next show is going to be called The Laureline, the After Years, 1953 to 1976. The Laureline, and you're probably familiar with that, especially you, Tony, living so close. The Laureline was the passenger service from 1903 to 1953, 50 years. It was built primarily to serve Rocky Glen Park. So it ran from Scranton, Cedar Avenue to Wilkes-Barre, directly opposite Genetti's. And it was the passenger service, and it ended in 1953, but it became a freight railroad. So we were privy to a lot of the 35 millimeter Ektachrome slides, which are in a lot of collections. And most of them are at the Pennsylvania Trolley Museum in Washington, Pennsylvania, southwest of Pittsburgh. That's our next show. It shows the valley for 2 years in the eyes of the way things looked in color 60, 70 years ago, never before seen in private collections. That's our next show. And the show right on the heels of that, we're working with you guys. You guys will be into this. We're doing the history of the 25th hour at the Woodlands Inn and Resort.
Whoa.
So Mitch Kornfeld, his brother Gary in Florida.
I've spent many a late night there.
Everybody has. And Tony, you're joking around, but that's the whole point of this, is that it's probably touched every person in this region at some point or another, whether it's for a confirmation or a bar mitzvah or the 25th hour. The previous club was called the Penny Arcade. It morphed into the 25th hour and now Club Evolution. I did 25 years there, hosting Sunday nights on 30 something. And it's like, that's our next program. So we're working exclusively with the video footage and even 8 millimeter footage of the club. That'll be out this fall. Again, another 2-hour deal. The history of and it's pretty funky title. It's called The 25th Hour Reflections from a Mirror Ball. And we're we kind of jazz it up a little bit.
That's cool.
There.
Yeah.
So that's our next show.
Awesome.
Yeah, it has a lot of regional appeal, gentlemen.
Of course. Now, Rusty, Kevin has a question that we ask every particular guest that we have on the show. I don't know if you've watched a couple videos, if you've seen what we do, of course. But Kevin, I shall leave the floor to you, sir.
I always ask because it's the most lied about answer possible. I already know the truth. Tony knows the truth as well, but we here at the Podguyz podcast want to know, after your illustrious career in radio, TV, documentary films, engineering extraordinaire, after all of that, is this from 10 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time, right? Is Eastern Daylight Time? 10 p.m. to 11 p.m. on the Podguyz podcast. Is this the peak of your career?
It is. When you made this show, I can die tonight. I'd like to get the Woodlands documentary done, but I can die tonight feeling fulfilled that I was invited by you gentlemen that found what I do interesting enough to talk about it. And I really mean that humbly and honestly. And I really do appreciate your time, your phone call, and speaking with you, because as I said before, not to be patronizing, but you folks are very, very well researched and very, very detail oriented. You don't ask stupid questions, and you are like lawyers. You know the answers to a lot of these questions before you actually ask them. And that is very refreshing, because I don't have to explain how the paper napkin or the wheel was invented. And it's been such a pleasure being on this program. I mean that, because you folks are definitely a thrill to be with, because you are definitely a very, very interesting media source.
We really appreciate that. Thank you, Rusty.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
You know what? We as a podcast in general, now the podcasting world has been around for probably about 5 to 10 years, right in about there. We don't tend to reinvent the wheel, but we like to see that the wheel is made of vulcanized rubber. And you know what? We like to play it straight. We like to ask questions that are legitimate and right to the point. We don't like to, pitter patter over the semantics of things, but we like to get straight to the meat and potato section.
podcasting is the new media, and you're right. It's been a little longer than 10 years because a lot of my 3,000 interviews on Saturday Night Live with the O's were being podcasted about 15 years ago. And at that time, I don't think, to use an old cliche, I don't think I saw really the forest through the trees on this deal. And now with the demise of local radio first and foremost, and now the ongoing forthwith demise of local television, that this is the new medium, this is the new frontier, because once again, the bottom line, Kevin and Tony, is that you can do this when you want it, you can do this in installments, you can do this at your own time, and it's not linear, it's not appointment television. I don't have to set an alarm to know that I'm going to do this. And if you keep the topics interesting like you do, this has just the legs on this program are just immense, because you guys are not the normal podcast that sit around and talk about absolutely nothing. You are very well focused and very well categorized, and it is such a pleasure to do this, and I really mean that.
Making us blush here, Rusty. You're making us blush.
That's the truth.
They say that the podcasting world has too much saturation, has way too much competition. That's what it's about, though. That's about competition. It's about knowing and wanting to go up against one another and be better than the other.
It is. And again, I get asked that at least maybe once a month as well, saying that I should do a podcast. And I said, well, first of all, I don't think I do that many interesting things that would warrant a weekly or a monthly podcast. Secondly,
Rusty,
again,
come on. There are topics that I haven't even touched on that I would love to hear your information about.
We can do this again, and I'm available to you guys all the time because I've had such a great time. And again, this is not not to make myself important, but I really don't have the time to sit down and do a 2-hour podcast. See, do I have a lot of things to talk about? Yeah, to be honest with you, I have a few things to talk about that would be very, very interesting to the average people, but I really don't have the time at this moment. Maybe if and when I retire, the TV shows now just came about. Again, the old cliche again is we never thought that this Rocky Glenn thing would be this big. 17,500 views in 2 weeks. I don't think the Kardashians get 17,500 views in 2 weeks. So, we rode the train on this deal. We were in the right place at the right time with the right footage, the right people put it together. It's not some goofy high school production that you put together on a flip phone. This is a really well done with music and background music and timing. And obviously it's good, but the podcasting, if the topics on podcasting are a wide range, and some of the podcasts I hear, I cringe at, because the real problem is that everyone thinks they're a star, and that's the problem. Everyone thinks that they have something important to say and that they're a star. You people truly have something to say, and you have the right people on that will at least tune in to at least 99% of the people, the listeners that are listening and viewing at the same time. And I think that's very, very difficult to get, either specific or generic topics. It's very difficult to do a show like this, especially on a weekly basis. Very, very difficult. And I don't have the time to do that. Would I like to do it? Yeah. I think, to explain the BP oil spill in process would probably take a whole half an hour. So, you'll turn a lot of people off on that.
You summed it up really well today, by the way. You summed it up
well.
well.
Radio, you got to keep it to like 3 minutes and 5 seconds, just like playing a 45 RPM.
Even if they say, hey, remember we gave you 3 minutes and 5 seconds? Even when they say, remember we gave you 3 minutes and 5 seconds, can you do it in 20 seconds?
Exactly.
20 seconds.
Exactly.
And then when you're doing it in 20 seconds, they're like, keep it going, actually. Like,
less is more. Less is more, gentlemen. Less is more. It's the truth. You always leave them wanting more instead of like, well, is this guy ever going to get done? No, you want to say that they should have this guy back because this guy was kind of interesting. You know what I mean? That's what you want to leave them.
I love it. Love it. Love it. Rusty, how would people get in touch with you, or where would they find the Rocky Glenn video if they were wanted to purchase it? Even for nostalgic reasons,
and you cannot purchase this. This is not a that's the good thing that we boast about. This is not a program of profit, so you cannot purchase it. It will not be available on DVD. And I think it would. I think just between you and Kevin and myself, and I think people for the most part agree with this. I think it would just bring us really down in the public eyes if we wanted to charge like $1.99 to stream it. Like that is like the lowest possible thing to charge. Like, do we really need the $2 that badly?
No.
So it's not available for streaming, not available on DVD, but you can go to WNEP.com, and then there's a link to WNEP Plus. If you scroll over through the stories, you'll find that the Rocky Glen Park is there, all 2 hours of it. And of course, they have commercials in it. That's not our doing, but everything is streamed, as we said, online.
It is what it is.
But if they want to watch that, that'd be fine. And you can get in touch with me anytime, via my 7 Facebook sites, either under Rusty Fender or Shadow Steel. Or my email is shadow with an E.
By the
on
way,
end.
same
Yep.
person.
Yeah, same person. So
Mind
it's Shadow.
blown.
It's SHADOE_Steel@yahoo.com. Best thing is to go to any of my 7 Facebook sites because they're all filled. So I have 33,887 fans at this time. So I'm very, very fortunate for that people still remember and still tell me to do Saturday Night Live with the Oldies again. And again, I don't know if that would really be as big as it was back in 1986, Kevin and Tony.
That's true. That's true. Sparky, where could you find us if you were looking for us?
Well, you could actually find us on mostly every single major streaming platforms, including iHeartRadio, Spotify, Spreaker, Deezer, Castbox, Pocket Cast, GeoReel, Facebook Live Video, Google Video,
Amazon Video.
Amazon Video. Yep, Amazon Video, and I'm missing one.
You are missing one.
Most of it is anywhere you would just Google us, the Podguyz podcast.
The merchbooth.com. Go on there. Fire t-shirts.
Yeah, you can go to merchbooth.com, go to the podcast section, scroll on down to the Podguyz podcast, click on it. You get your favorite long sleeve, short sleeve t-shirts, hoodies, zip up or non-zip up, socks, pantyhose, underwear, boxers, all apparel. So that way you can celebrate your divorce in style. Because if you're buying all of our stuff immediately in that kind of fashion, you're in a tight spot. We appreciate you listening.
Yeah.
Also, Tony posted a thing on Facebook for it's some kind of competition, and there is a podcast section for best podcasts.
Yeah, that little old thing, the Electric
thing,
City Music competition. Of course, for local podcasts, if you could write us in the Podguyz podcast for best local podcast, of course. We would
highly appreciate it. Yeah, highly appreciated. We are, in our opinion, doing our best, and we are probably one of the most consistent podcasts. You see these sometimes, you got these pop-up shows once in a while. We've been going every week consistently, except for that one week I had to go to the Philippines, and we still got a couple shows in there too as well.
It's true. Rusty, thank you very much for taking the time out of your busy schedule as well. We really appreciate you coming on.
Again, and Sparky, Kevin, and Tony Kaz, thank you so much for having me. I'm always at your disposal. Please keep in touch with me, gentlemen.
Absolutely.
Rusty, if you were to give advice to end our show, what kind of advice would you give?
Get out of broadcasting. Don't take broadcasting in school. Get into business administration. There's the big 3 right there.
There's the big 3. Get out, get in, get out.
If you want,
Write it down, folks.
If you want to work for $7.25 an hour with no benefits, then get into radio because you'll need a job at Applebee's waiting on tables. If you really want to be successful, get into this home health care. I used to tell my students in broadcasting, journalism, and telecommunications. Home health care is where you can command $67 to $75 an hour. I know it's clearly not for me and a lot of people. Home health care or business administration. Stay away at this moment from anything that has to do with mass communications. That's my bicentennial minute, gentlemen.
Love
Beautiful.
it.
Beautiful, sir. Make sure you like, share, comment below. Guys, we're the Podguyz podcast. I'm Tony Kaz.
Kevin Neary.
Of course, the ever-loving Picasso, Les Sparky. Guys, we'll talk to you soon. Have a great night. Bye.